All right, so I want to welcome you all to today's webinar, How to Harness the Power of Listings and Reviews. Thanks so much again for joining us today. This webinar is actually stop 3 on our webinar series this week. It's called Online Marketing Must-Haves, Your Roadmap to Results. In the first few days of the week, we talked about the foundations of online marketing and how all of the tools work together. Yesterday, we really focused on the essential elements for your website. And today we're focusing on listings and reviews and how they can really benefit your business and set them up at a foundational level. No matter what type of business or nonprofit organization you have, listings and review sites can really play an important role for you, and especially in getting found. Anytime I'm looking for a new place to eat, especially, or any type of business, I actually just go out to Google and I search for what I'm needing. I want to find a good place to eat that has good quality food and good service no matter where I'm at. And so one of the things that pops up in those search results is those listings and reviews. And I really want to see what others are saying about a restaurant, especially before I give it a try. Some stats show that 93% of consumers have used the internet to find a local business just like me. And 87% of consumers read reviews online. And then on average, they are actually reading 10 reviews before they feel they're able to trust a business. Now, in order to unleash the full power of these tools for your business, you really want to make sure you're presenting yourself in the best way possible. And it's more than just setting up these sites and getting found. It's all about utilizing them in a way that shows you're credible and trustworthy to do business with. And there are a few steps we're going to suggest you take in order to set these pages up effectively to show up in the search results and maintain them over time. And that's what we're going to be covering today. So let's break it down a little bit more. Here's our agenda. We're going to start today by talking about the basics of getting started. We'll talk about some ideas and places where you want to be and talk about some ways that you want to optimize your profile. A little later, we're going to talk about how to encourage people to leave reviews, which is an important part of this. And lastly, we're going to talk about maintaining listings and review sites over time. Before we get into the details, allow me to more formally introduce myself as well as my guest. My name is Stephanie French, and I'm the content manager for webinars here at Constant Contact. And I'm very excited to bring back Dave Charest. He is the director of content marketing. And together we're going to be going through the presentation today and helping you to learn the foundations of listings and review sites and how they can really work for your business. So Dave, if you want to hop on and say a quick hello.
I am here. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I feel like we're all old friends by this point. Here we are on Wednesday. This is our third webinar in the series, so looking forward to having you here today. Thank you. We've also had some really great feedback from all of you who have been joining this week, so thank you so much for that. As I mentioned, we do look at all of it. And one of the things we've been seeing is people have been mentioning that they'd love to see some more stuff based on the Constant Contact product itself. And I did want to let you know that we actually do have other webinars that we run on a regular basis that actually take you through kind of a marriage between some of these best practices that we're mentioning and also how to do those things within Constant Contact itself. We kind of try to keep these a little bit more broad and product agnostic because we have more people than just Constant Contact customers joining us, which is why we do that. But we do have those available, and I think someone's going to share a link out where you can find the schedule for those webinars. We have a great team that will take you through how to do the ins and outs of using Constant Contact. So if you're looking for that type of stuff, you can find that there. And then I also just wanted to mention that today is another one of those, we're going to get more specific into listings and reviews, but as you imagine, this is another one of those topics, particularly with the major platforms that we're going to talk about that can really benefit from taking a deeper dive into each of those. And so just to let you know that we are planning on doing that for some of the major networks later in the year. So for today we'll still be, as Steph gave you the agenda, so we'll be covering those items, but we'll be answering your questions, of course, but then we'll plan on going a deeper dive into each of these individual platforms a little more closely later in the year. So that's all I wanted to say to start.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. Let's talk about getting started with these tools, where to be, and how to optimize your profiles. Now, before we do that, I am going to go ahead and launch a poll on your screen. The question we'd really love to know today is, how much time do you spend managing your listings and reviews each day? So the possible answers are: I don't spend any time, less than 1 hour a day, 1 to 3 hours a day, or 3+ hours a day.
Oh, Steph, it looks like we have the action of someone leaves a review poll up.
Yes, we do.
So maybe we want to let that one run and then we'll go to the other one.
We'll run the other one a little bit later.
Okay.
Oh, I did launch them incorrectly. So, are you taking any action after someone leaves you a review? So the answers are: I read and respond to every review, or I respond to some, but it's not a priority, or I ignore them. And then the last one is: I feature them in my marketing. So I see 39% of you have voted. Most people are, 42%, Dave, are saying I read and respond to every review, and that is awesome. Definitely
I love to
something
see
we
that.
recommend, and we're gonna dive in there. So I'll launch the other poll after we're done here. We'll just get through them a little bit
We'll
differently
just
than
switch
we
them
have.
around a little bit, that's
Yes,
all.
keeping everyone on our toes. All right.
It's really great to see that the majority of people are reading and responding to those reviews. Unfortunate to see people that are just ignoring them altogether, but good to see that people are responding, which is great.
Yes. And 12% are featuring them in their marketing, which is also really a great idea. And we'll provide some quick tips on that and some things to think about there as well. Carol says, I spotlight reviews on our website and social media.
Great.
Yeah, so awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll close out this poll and I'll share the results with you. So Dave, we ended up with 44% of people saying I read and respond to every review, 32% respond to some, but it's not a priority, 12% ignore them, and 12% feature them in their marketing.
Yeah.
So
Again, makes a lot of sense. It's good to see that I respond is important, is up there at the top. It is an important thing to do, and I think, I don't mind that it's not a priority in some instances for these for as the second choice, because ultimately it depends on the nature of your business and where you are getting the majority of your customers from. And so I can totally see that being something where, it may not be uh, a priority for people, but they do respond when they get a chance to do that. So that's great.
awesome. So now let's go to the other poll that I had intended to click on first. This is the one I was trying to launch. So how much time do you spend managing your listings and reviews each day? So do you spend any time, which now we know some of you do. You may not spend any time, 1 to 3 hours a day, or 3+ hours a day. So Dave, the interesting one is about 47% now, or right around 50% are saying 1 to 3 hours a day. So that is interesting. I do think that often I find a lot of small businesses aren't spending really enough time in this area, or maybe it's just not the people that we're talking to today, which I think is awesome.
So I think also just interesting. I think we we have today. We've been doing so great all week, and of course this is the day where the kinks are coming in. But I think we have. I don't spend any time as two of the options. So we're actually up over 57% of people, or 56% of people that don't spend any time on these reviews, and then 42% spend 1 to 3 hours. And so hopefully, I think that other questions should have been up to an hour a day. And
Yeah.
I hope hopefully most people are actually in that bucket. So 1 to 3, it's good to see people there. I think the reality is with these listings and review sites is many times they are often what I would call kind of social light. So they're not the same time suck that a Facebook or Twitter or an Instagram or something like that would be. But you should have it as part of your process and your workflow to go and make sure that you're, spending some time to look and make sure there's things that you don't have to respond to or take care of in these things. So interesting there.
Yeah, awesome. So I'll share this. I did mess up that poll because I put in the wrong answer there twice. So sorry about that. So here's where we ended up. So we'll assume 50% of you plus aren't spending any time. And then 41% of you are saying 1 to 3 hours a day. So that is great. Now,
Really glad to see, though, that no one is spending more than 3 hours
yes,
doing any of this work, because it shouldn't be that type of thing. Other than the setup process where you may take a little bit of time, after
yeah.
that, maintaining, let's hope that you're not spending that much time, unless it's like a huge thing for you where you're getting tons of business from that site. So
Awesome. So let's go ahead and dive in and let's talk a little bit about this idea of claiming listings and what that means. When someone does business with you, they can go out there and they can leave a review, which puts your information out there in some of these places we're talking about. Claiming a listing means that you're going to take full control of that review. And oftentimes the sites look a little bit different, but here we see an unclaimed listing site for this particular business. And we're seeing over here on the right is this claim this business option. Regardless of the site, you're going to see something similar, claim this business, claim this listing, something along those lines. What we want to suggest you do is start by finding these existing sites that are out there that your customers have created about you. To do that, we're going to suggest that you search for your company name and then claim all of the listings that show up on the first page of the results. Now, claiming a listing is really going to allow you to get full control of your business information and make changes when things change in your business or with all of the craziness of the past 2 years. Those are really important things that prospects and customers really want to know about you. And this is going to allow you claiming and taking control of your listing is to make sure that information is accurate. And having all this information out there about you is going to give you a better chance of showing up in the search as well as maps. Dave, do you want to tell us a little bit more about this process for claiming the listing sites and what that's like?
yeah, you mentioned a couple of things that I'd love to touch on for folks. And one of those, of course, is, you mentioned with all the craziness that's happening in the world right now and all that, all that hullabaloo it's causing businesses and what's going on, and quite frankly, customers and consumers as well. And so I think if anything we've learned through this, pandemic time is that often these online channels were a way, and it's accelerated businesses adapting these channels because it was a way for them to connect with people and contact them and keep in touch. And so one of the things that you really think of, these are the places that people are going to turn when they're going to find out information about your business. And so that's why it's so important to make sure that you do have these businesses and that you've claimed them so that you can update that information in the best way possible, particularly when things are changing all the time, whether or not, you're even open, for example, or if your hours are now limited or your services are now limited. These are all great places to be able to update that information so people can get that information quickly no matter where they're looking. So that's one thing. The second thing is that you mentioned that I wanted to touch on is really like, how do you start to set priorities for how you may think about, claiming these listings and going about that. And I think that comes down to like what you mentioned, when you search for your business within Google, and I would even use the other major, search engines as well, but Google is the most popular, of course. But so start there. But search for your business name and see what comes up. And of the listings and review sites that come up, use that, the order they are in that list, use that as the order with which to go and make sure that you're claiming them. And as Steph mentioned, oftentimes it's as simple as just, there's a little, as we see on the screen there, is this your business? You can hit that claim button, and then each one is a little bit different. So they'll take you through a series of things that you'll need to do in order to verify that you are the owner of the business. But once you do that, you'll be able to actually get in there and get access to more of the tools that the page offers you and make sure that you're updating and have the correct information on all of those channels.
Awesome. And I wanted to address a question from Cindy. Right now, as an example of Yelp, we're going to talk about a few other sites here in just a minute, but she wanted to know if you have to pay Yelp to do this. Do you want to start there and I can tag on?
Sure. So so the all of these profiles are pretty much free, and I think all of them offer some level of, I think except for Google, I don't think Google has any paid offering on the Google listings at the moment. But just like Facebook or Yelp, again, they make their money by, having you pay for additional things. And so the listings themselves are free, but you can do certain things like advertise on Yelp. You can also do different things, like I think you can have a call to action on your Yelp profile. You can do all things like that that actually are additional fees. And so depending on, this is where, again, similarly to anything else that we talk about, it's great to have those foundational pieces in place and then take a look at what your options are about adding onto that foundation. And so you may find that, and I think this is particularly true for restaurants, but you actually have the ability to, you might be getting a lot of customers from that. And so you can start to use these enhanced features. You can start to see some analytics. Some other things that you can do is Yelp will often, as people are looking at your page, they will have at the end of the page, they will also list other businesses that are similar to yours for their user. And another feature you can do is you can actually pay to have those removed, so they keep you focused on just your business. You can, I think they have like enhanced photo galleries and things like that you can do. And so if I should probably say too, like deals and reservations with Yelp. If you want a tool that helps you make reservations and do that, I mean, that's a tool that I've used in the past. That those are all things that you can pay for in addition to just the general Yelp listing. But you don't have to use those bells and whistles if you don't want to. And if it makes sense for you, it may be worth the investment.
Great information. Yep. All right, so one of the main sites we're going to suggest you claim a listing on is Google Business Profile. If you've joined us in the past, it used to be called Google My Business. Now it's called Google Business Profile. So if you're wondering where the difference is, there is no difference. They just updated the name. But if you look at this Google Business listing, it is what shows up on the right-hand side of this desktop computer when someone does a search. Look how much real estate that is taking up on a computer screen. That is awesome. And then on a mobile device, what we see is it's one of the first things that comes up. And a lot of times if someone is doing a search for something that matches whatever that person is searching for, it just draws in a little snippet of that information from Google Business Listing. This profile is so important to all of you who have any sort of local presence in your area. But the great thing about Google Business Listings, you're going to be able to link them to your website. It shows directions, as well as all of this other essential information. And then reviews, which are huge. Dave really likes to read his reviews on Yelp. I actually like to read reviews for all the different businesses on Google Business Profile, just because it pops up right there. The other great thing about this tool is there are images and tons of other information and features, like you can show different images for your Google Business Profile, future events, and then there's some information on posts as well. So Dave, I want to address a question we've seen a few times from people.
Mhm.
Does Google Business Profile work for nonprofits? Do you want to address that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely it does. And I think the way to think about the Google Business Profile is that it's really designed for any business that has some type of face-to-face interaction. And so whether that's a store, whether it's, retail, whatever the case may be, B2B, if you have the ability to meet face to face with somebody, that's the type of thing that this is used for. And so nonprofits, of course, fit that. Even if you're, let's say you're a plumber or something like that, and you may not, like, let's say you work from home, right? So you may not have an office. All of those things are places where you can put your information and use your service area as like the different places that you reach to. But if you're that type of business, you can use these things. And so for nonprofits specifically, which was your actual question, Steph, sorry. Yeah, it's really important because again, it's another essential element when somebody's going to be going to look for your nonprofit. Again, these are all research driven searches typically. These are people looking to find out more information about your business, about your nonprofit. And as we see on the screen, this is a huge piece of real estate within the search environment. And having that there, having that available, and giving people that kind of overview or snapshot of your business or nonprofit right here is really important. And so you can, include things for, information for volunteers and donors, of course, ways for people to support your cause, and all of that can be done within the Google Business Profile, regardless if you're a business or a nonprofit.
So Google Business Profile is really intended for local search. It's going to work for any of you who has a physical presence somewhere in your local area, like retail stores or a restaurant with a brick and mortar location. It is not intended for e-commerce, and unfortunately, it doesn't work for that. It's not meant for that, and they have some terms of service that prohibit those kinds of things. So keep that in mind if you're strictly e-commerce and not strictly an online store. Now, I do want to mention that Google Business Profile is great, especially if you have a service business where you're serving a local area. We own a garage door repair company, and this is such an important tool for our business so people can quickly gather the information they need to call us or simply learn more. We don't have an office or a store location, but we do set it up as service areas. So if you're someone like a plumber or an HVAC company where you're going out and you're serving people in cities or areas like that, make sure you're setting up with it as those service areas versus having an office location. Is there anything else that maybe I missed, Dave, that you wanted to add to Google Business?
So I think, I mentioned a little bit earlier, and this is really not specific as any of these things really. I think anything that you do, it's about how much time you invest in it, and if that's an important piece of your overall strategy or how you're driving business. The thing that I like specifically about Google Business Profile is that it's like that light social media tool, and so it's not one of those things where you have to go every day and post an update or do something. They have tools that allow you to put up posts or messages that, almost like little mini advertisements as you'd call it, that you don't have to pay for, of course, but you can put them up there, and those last for 7 days and then they go away. And so it's really great when you have timely information that you want to put up there. And it's nice because you don't have to continually be feeding it like some of those other channels that I mentioned earlier when we're talking about Instagram, Facebook, or those types of things. And so again, you can use things on those posts that include a link, and you can drive people back to your website. You can drive people back to your sign up forms if you want to get people on your list. And so there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can use this. And for those businesses that are selling products, there's even a tie-in with selling products that you can do as well with these listings. And so it's great for showcasing your business or your nonprofit or whatever the case may be.
And for those of you who need to create a Google Business Profile or learn more about it, we're going to share a link to a blog post in the chat window so that you can learn more. And we've got a great blog post that actually walks you through setting it up and everything to consider there. Now, we're also going to suggest that you claim your listing on a few other sites as well. There's Facebook and Yelp. Facebook allows people to collect reviews and recommendations from people, which is really valuable. And then, of course, Yelp, which we saw an example of earlier. Then there are going to be some other sites out there that are going to help you to get listed in places that are relevant to your industry or the type of business or organization that you have. So we've got a few listed here on the screen. For example, if you're in restaurant or catering or dining, you might think about TripAdvisor or OpenTable. If you're in home services or construction or like a handyman, you might think about HomeAdvisor or Angie's List, what is now called Angie's. Then there's medical and healthcare. If you're in that industry, you might think about WebMD or HealthGrades. And then for those of you in real estate, you might think about Zillow, Trulia, and Realtor.com. We've got a great blog post that we'll share in the chat window that provides a lot more great information, as well as links to claiming your sites. And if you go in there, you'll find some information relevant to different industries or where to find review and listing sites that are relevant to your industry as well. So once you've taken control of your listings, you're going to want to spend a little time to optimize them for search ranking. And Dave, I'll let you talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So, one of the nice things in particular about the Google profile is that it provides information to what the Google calls like a local pack. And so that means information within the maps, and it also means information on the knowledge panels, that those are the things that we see on the side there. And so, across all of these things, of course, what we want to do is make sure that you're filling out the entire profile. The good news is that, I've been doing this recently with a Facebook page, and it actually does a really nice job of kind of walking you through what you want to do. I think one of the things that you probably want to do, as you've heard us mention multiple times throughout the years, is obviously these sites, Facebook in particular, is they make money through advertising, right? They make money for you paying to boost posts and do all of that. So they're going to push you to do that. But if you kind of ignore those things to start, and you just start doing those things to get your profile set up, and you follow that information, it really does a good job of walking you through that process. So take advantage of those setup tools as you're doing them. But the big thing here is to make sure that you're completing your profiles as much as possible, and that the information that you're using on one is the same as the information that you're using on another. And so you want to just make sure, it can be something as simple as if you write out, 123, First Avenue versus 123 First Ave. Little things like that cause inconsistencies because a computer is looking at it, not necessarily a human, and making those connections in terms of like how they're pulling in the information. And so you want to just make sure that how you're doing it in one place is the same way you're doing it in every place. And then Google, as you're filling out these things, is obviously looking at that, and it's pulling in the best information to serve to somebody searching for those things. And so as much as possible, add photos, add products, all of those things that these things allow you to do, take advantage of them. So more of that, the richer the search results are going to be for people, and the more information they're going to garner from each of these locations, that ultimately lead up to telling that story that you want to be told about your business, which hopefully means getting you a new customer or a new volunteer or a new donor or whatever the case may be. So that's what I'd say to thinking about, how you optimize these channels.
Awesome. And I want to address a question from Sandra, who asks, is Google good for those who work from home? I'll start with an example I've seen. So it can be if you serve a certain area that's local to you. For example, I recently heard about a lawyer who works out of his house, but he does have clients come in. In that case, you could actually set it up as a service area. If you're strictly selling online or something like that, you wouldn't want to use it. And Dave, I don't know if you have any other examples or anything else you might want to add.
Well, I would just mention that rule of thumb that I think I mentioned a little bit earlier. If you have a business that allows you to meet face to face with someone, then that means you have a service area, you have a location. And so even if you're working from home, you can actually choose to hide that information. You don't have to put your your home address down, because I understand people would be wary of doing that. But if you
Yeah.
do meet face to face with people, Google allows you to choose a service area to let people know, oh, this is kind of where I'd be working with people if that was the case. So specifically, the answer to the question is yes, you'd be able to set it up like that in a way that would be beneficial to you without revealing your home address if you didn't want people showing up at your house, which is, I don't know why you'd be afraid of that.
Yeah, and I would guess, yeah, speaking of our garage door business, that's actually how we set it up. We do everything, I mean, we maintain everything out of our home. So obviously we're not going to put the address of that out there, but that is why the service area portion of when you're setting up that profile, again, is so important. But just another example for you to think of and see if it's going to work for you. All right, so let's move on to the second section, and this is where we're going to talk about how to encourage people to leave reviews, which is another important aspect of everything we're talking about today. It's really important to make sure you're continually asking for reviews, and I know some people probably in the audience find this a little bit hard or even intimidating. When I'm a consumer and I like to, I'm going out there to a restaurant, I want to see recent reviews of things because things with the business change over time. I want to know what people are saying about you and your business or organization is recent. I want to know that you're still good because there's so much that can change in a year or even two. You could have been a great restaurant a year or two ago, but if I go to your last one and the last review was 3 years ago, I'm going to be a little bit iffy and less likely to actually go and visit and do business with you. But if I see your reviews are recent and they're good, that's really telling me that you're a good place to go. Show people that you're still in business and that your products and services are good right now. Now, of course, we're hoping to get people to say good things about us and give us a good positive review. One stat we found that says that 47 or excuse me, 74% of consumers say that positive reviews make them trust a local business more. Now, on the other side of that, we do have the possibility of negative reviews. And I've talked to so many businesses where they want to avoid this whole idea of asking for reviews because of this possibility. There's a lot of fear out there to ask for these reviews because you might get a few bad reviews. Now, later we're going to talk more about managing and responding to reviews, even the bad ones. But the thing is, these negative reviews are only damaging when you ignore them. One stat shows that 3.5 and 4.5 stars actually earn more revenue than any other rating. And for me, when I'm looking at all this information, Dave, I don't want to see that you have 250 five-star reviews. I'm not really trusting that because you might have gone out there and asked hundreds of your friends to leave you a review, and your friends are probably going to review you positively. So, those negative reviews can actually help you in some ways. Do you have anything else you want
Yeah,
to add about this?
sure. And it's not, necessarily, I mean, I think, 3.5 to 4.5, I mean, those are all really good reviews still.
Yes.
It's just, somebody's preference on a particular thing. And I think what you're saying is a good thing in the sense that, yeah, if it's all 5 stars reviews, it starts to look phony. And unfortunately, there are a lot of bad actors out there or businesses that claim like, oh, we'll get you all these 5-star reviews on Yelp or wherever the case may be. And these platforms are on the lookout for those types of things, and you want to avoid doing any of that. And we'll talk about some of that in the don't section, which is we're coming up here on. But the reality is, though, if they're legitimate reviews and they're coming from real people, it's quite possible that a bad review is going to happen. And I know oftentimes you get, as a business owner, you hate to see that because you feel like it's going to cost you something. And look, it's going to happen. Hopefully it happens, less than more. And if you have a situation where it's happening more, I mean, that's probably a time to reflect on what your business practices are and maybe what you're doing and why you're getting those, right? But oftentimes it can often be just a misunderstanding on why somebody leaves a review like that, or it just could be a bad day. Who knows? The reality is, if you have those reviews, we always recommend that you're responding to them and you're trying to rectify the situation in a professional manner, because sometimes it's a legitimate concern that you can be handled, and people will go and will update those reviews if they've had a problem or you have fixed that problem for them. But ultimately, what it does is it shows that you're listening, that you're paying attention, you care enough about your customers to respond to a review like that. And as new people are coming in and making those judgments on whether or not they want to do business with you, part of that is a reflection on the character of your business, and it is helping in some way that person make a distinction or a decision on whether or not you're the type of business that they want to spend their money with. So keep that in mind as well.
Awesome. So it is important to get those new reviews, like we said, and ultimately it's going to come down to asking people to leave reviews in a couple of ways, which we'll talk about in a minute. But there are a few big rules and things that you don't want to do. Dave, you want to go through them?
Sure thing. So I think the big thing, I mentioned this before, is that there are companies out there that will say like, oh, we'll get you, X amount of reviews if you pay us such and such money. And the reality is, all of these places, again, if you think about it, just as Google wants to serve people and serve its customers the best way, and meaning the person searching by serving them the best information, the same thing with a site like Yelp or any of these review sites. They want to make sure that the people, end user using that tool, are getting the best possible recommendations, so they continue to use that platform. And so they're always trying to make sure that the reviews that they're getting and the information that people are putting on those platforms are valid and from real people. And so they're looking for reviews that sound, hokey or not real or that type of thing. And so you never want to pay somebody to do that. Obviously, you don't want to try to force people to leave reviews, because what you want to get, because some people are uncomfortable, some people don't do it, which is fine. You always can have that ask, but you don't really what I try, no, you gotta leave us a review. You don't want to do any of that stuff, right? The other thing is giving incentives. You can jump around here back and forth on that, but ultimately you want to get people leaving a review that's honest and feels like it's coming from them. And when you start to do this stuff, and you may see that as a recommendation on some sites, we don't recommend it because it clouds how people think and perceive and talk about your business, which in turn can change the way somebody views it. And so you want to get real things. And then the other thing is, don't just send a blanket email to your entire list. You want to really look for those opportunities where you are putting things in place that allow you to take advantage of kind of the moments in time where it makes the most sense to actually ask for those reviews, or make the recommendation, or let them know that you're on a particular platform, because as we'll talk about, Yelp itself doesn't really like you to ask for reviews, and it's more about making people aware that you are on Yelp, so that way they know where to find your business and they can go leave those reviews for you. So those are some of the don'ts. So maybe we can talk about some of the ways that we want people to,
Yes.
what we want to do.
Yeah, so I want to address something before we dive into this list. And I think a good opportunity for those of you who are face to face, or maybe dealing with people on the phone or something like that, if someone has come into your store or your restaurant and they seem so happy and they're saying, "Thank you, this was awesome." I think face to face is really a great time to ask them to leave a review. But then there's other things that you can incorporate, like email and some things there. Dave, do you want to walk through it?
Yeah, so a bunch of things. I think the big thing is you just got to overcome, much like growing your email list. I think you need to overcome that fear of just asking people, and or mentioning to people that, like, hey, I'm glad you had a really great experience here today. We'd love if you let other people know about it. We're on Yelp. If you're on Yelp, you can go do that. Or it's also thinking about what is the place, or maybe there are moments in time where you have your focus on one platform versus the other, rather than, because it can start to get confusing. Like, oh, should we go here? Should we go there? Right? Maybe you've just filled out your Google business profile. You don't have a lot of reviews there. So maybe you're going to spend the first half of the year really focused on that and building those up. And that's where you're asking people to leave reviews. Or maybe, here's a cool tip that you can think about. Maybe you can identify the Gmail users within your email contact list, and then you can know, like, oh, hey, these are the people that have a Gmail account or have a Google account. So these would be the good people to ask us to leave a Google review, because they're probably already logged in to their account, and they can probably do that for you pretty easily, right? So something like that. Again, yeah, those emails after a purchase or interaction, right? Think of those moments in time, just like when they've had a great experience with you, and that's a good time to ask them to connect with you. It's also really a great time to ask them to leave you a review and let them know about the experience, right? So think about that. Um, Give people those direct links to do that when you're doing those things. Consider using a tool like email automation. That, of course, Constant Contact offers ways for you to do that. I think you can also think beyond just the list here, and you can think about, like, how do you use social media to make people aware of that you're on these different platforms and on these different places where you're having an interaction with somebody, and you can say, like, if they had a good interaction with you there, oh, would love if you shared this interaction, or let people know about your experience over in this place. Even if you have people within your business, if you have a face-to-face type of thing, you have those personal interactions with people, just having those moments to, oftentimes you go to, we go to places, we have really great, a great person on the wait staff or something that really helped make that experience even better. Now imagine if that person said, obviously we're going to tip them well, but imagine if they said, like, hey, we'd love to see you back in. If you had a really great time today, why don't you leave us a review over here on this place, or let us know about it over here. Again, that's, oh, you know what, I'll do that, right? Because we've had such a great experience. But also you can think about your website. I know Yelp, for example, offers you little badges that you can put. You can even put them in your store windows. You can hang signage around the store. You can do all of those things. So even you can think about maybe even using an email signature. So just randomly, as you're speaking and interacting with people, you might run into a person that has, again, a good experience with you, that, oh, you're making them aware that these are things for you. A lot of people have point of sale. things in software that they use that print out receipts. Oftentimes you can set up a custom message on those receipts. So that's another place where you can think about exposing, these places or make that ask to people. And so it's really all about thinking of, much like, again, you'll hear us talk about in our email session later in the week, when you're trying to build that list, think of all those possible interactions that you have with people and where they are. And if this is the focus for your business right now, again, remember, it doesn't always have to be the focus for your business, but it's part of that, especially when you're trying to build things up. And then it can kind of fall to the background a little bit as you start to focus on other things that are more of a priority. But if you think of all those places that you have the opportunity to connect with people, those are all the places that you want to make people aware of it. So keep that in mind.
Awesome. Lots of great information there. So let's move on for the sake of time and talk about maintaining these listings and review pages, and especially the part about responding, which is so important. So Dave, I'll have you kick us off here and talk a little bit more about why it's important. I think we touched on it a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I mean, just to beat a dead horse here, right? Like, again, this responding piece is so important. And I think we saw most people were responding, but some people just weren't even bothering, or it wasn't really a priority. Again, the reason why it's a priority, or should be in the sense of responding both to good and bad, is because people are looking at those things. And imagine you have a bad review and you haven't responded, or when there's no activity going on, you're like, huh, I guess this business doesn't care, right? And so whether or not it's true, it doesn't matter, because I don't know that full story and I don't know what's going on. I'm just basing it off what I'm seeing. And so, again, set up some process where you're checking in on these sites regularly. Again, we don't want to see you. I'm hoping you're spending less than an hour on these sites after you've the initial setup, but have that as part of your process, that this is a thing that I'm going to check in with at a regular basis, so that I can respond and put a good professional foot forward with my business for new people that don't know this business yet.
Definitely. So some tips for managing and responding to these reviews. So we suggest responding within 2 business days. That's when things are relevant. We talked about asking people to leave a review when it's relevant and not waiting 2 weeks or anything like that. And your response should be timely as well. And while it might seem obvious, you want to make sure you're using proper grammar, spelling, and punctuation. In today's world, we're often chatting and doing millions of things from our phone, and sometimes those things get lost, or we're using abbreviations and things like that. So just make sure you're sounding human, because that's going to help you put your best foot forward ultimately. And make sure you're responding to the negative reviews as well as the positive reviews. This way you can do your best no matter where you're at or who you're responding to, and try your best to remain positive and upbeat. I know sometimes when someone leaves a negative review for your business, if you're the owner, it's like your baby, and it can feel a little bit sad, and you might be a little bit negative about it, but just try to remain positive and upbeat, especially on those negative reviews. Anything else you want to address here, Dave?
I think a good way to think of it too is when you're responding to these things, again, imagine that you were face to face with that customer. And so, you mentioned grammar, spelling, and punctuation. You want to be articulate, you want to be professional, you want to make sure that you're responding to those in a way that reflects on your business in a good manner. So keep that in mind. We often get asked too about, like, can we get negative reviews removed? And I think, again, we don't necessarily want to do that, because people are going to view those as more real in terms of just looking at your profile as a whole. Oftentimes things can be invalid, or it could just be something crazy that happened. And again, I think most people can decipher between kind of those crazy situations and ones that are really valid. And your work with the business itself, in terms of the platform that you're on, asking them to remove it can be a hit or miss thing, and a rabbit hole that you probably don't want to go down. But what you should do is, in those instances, is, again, really put some focus on getting more positive reviews in, and getting those things that kind of drive down those more negative reviews, because most of these platforms try to serve up the most helpful reviews for people. And if one of those negative reviews isn't helpful, well, guess what? They're probably not going to get served up anyway. So really focus on getting those things done.
So April has a good question here. Is it bad to use the same canned response when answering reviews? Don't do that. That is my opinion. You want all of these responses to sound human. You're a real human versus just a robot on the other side of the computer who's responding like we're suggesting that you do here. And Dave, I don't know if you had any other insight you wanted to add to that.
Well, I think, as we started off this series all week, one of the things that we said was, or that I mentioned, was this idea of if you wouldn't do it face to face, don't do it online. And this even kind of highlights this even more, is imagine you went to a business and all you got was the same canned response, or you were trying to make a decision on if you were going to go to do business with them, and you looked at all their responses and it was the same thing over and over and over. And this is probably one of the things that we can, as we get, later in the year and we dive into each of these things, is probably how to respond. And it's about showing empathy, acknowledging the problem, and saying you're sorry that that specific thing happened to them, and then trying to figure out a way for them to contact you. You try to take that offline, and that way you guys can have a private conversation about how we can fix that issue. And so those were some of the types of things that I would think of, and just think of like how that's going to look. And so that kind of gives you that guiding point on, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do it like that. People want to feel heard and not feel like you're just going through the motions with them.
I think if you have an employee who's maybe helping you and they need some ideas, come up with some like canned responses that they can take and modify, just kind of like spark on how they might reply, especially like to good reviews as well as the negative reviews. If you need a few ideas like that. If you're still looking for ideas, maybe go out there and take a look at your competitor and see, are they responding to these? How are they responding? And that'll give you some ideas as well. Maybe you'll see some things that you don't want to do, which I have definitely seen. And maybe you'll get some ideas for ways that you want to respond or verbiage you might want to use that sounds real and authentic from your business.
Yeah, just to add to that stuff, I think it's more about the structure of the response than it is more about the exact words that you're going to use. And
True.
so it's all about, again, acknowledging, trying to rectify, and then giving a solution to people. And so, yeah, just to add that.
Awesome. So I want to mention, and a few of you I think have asked about this already, but reviews can certainly be helpful in generating more business. One way we want to suggest that you use them is to feature them on your website and maybe in some of your sales materials. But it's important to know that reviews are actually copyrighted by the platforms they come in on. Someone earlier, and I lost the name of it because the chat window scrolled, but they asked about taking a review and putting it on another platform, copying and pasting. You don't want to do that. But what you can do in some of these instances is to look for a software or a platform that allows you to showcase the reviews. Unfortunately, we can't recommend anything specifically here, but if you go out and you do a search online and search for tools to add reviews to your website or showcase reviews on website, you'll find a lot of great tools that you can go in there and choose from.
Something that we should probably mention here, Steph, that I think is also interesting to do is, aside from just these listings and review sites, if somebody is saying something good about your business on social media, for example, those are all public kind of tweets and information, and those are all things that you can grab screenshots of, and those are things that you can reshare, and those are all things that you can do that are also a great way to kind of provide reviews for your business that aren't on one of these sites in particular. So something to think about there as well.
That makes sense. So at this point, we've got tons of other great questions coming in, and I want to get to it in just a few minutes. Before we do that, I want to recap a few things. First and foremost, start out by doing a search for your business and claim any existing sites that are out there about you where your customers have left reviews. Then you want to spend a little time making sure you're optimizing your profile and information to get it just right. And again, what Dave said earlier is make sure that the information, even something you don't usually think about, like with your address or your phone number, if you're using parentheses or if you're using dashes or you're typing out the word avenue versus just using an abbreviation with a period at the end, make sure those are consistent across, because Google really loves when everything just matches up perfectly. For the second one, you want to remember that in most cases, it is okay to ask for reviews. I saw someone attended a Yelp webinar earlier. Don't ask for reviews on Yelp. They actually frown upon that. but don't skip this step because of the possibility of negative reviews. And that's all because you want to spend a little time responding to your reviews. That's going to work the best for you, and you want to respond to those good and those bad reviews. For those bad reviews especially, try to solve the problems and show new people who find that review that you do care and you're trustworthy to work with. And also make sure your responses are real and authentic, and I really don't suggest ever copying and pasting. It looks more like a robot that way. All right, so I want to let you all know before we get to these questions that Constant Contact has so many great tools to help you with your small business. Websites, stores, email, and social media, as well as paid ads to help you all along the way. So if you don't already have an account, you can sign up for a free trial. We'll share a link in the chat window, or you can just go to constantcontact.com. And just a note, when we end the webinar today, a survey is going to pop up on your screen, and we'd really love it if you take just a minute or two to answer 2 simple questions. It really won't take you long, but we'd love to hear your feedback. And no need to register for it since you're all here live, but I want to remind you of tomorrow's webinar. It's the 4th stop in our webinar series, and it's how to win with email marketing. All right, so let's get to these questions. I see multiple people are asking about older reviews, and I've seen some more specifically. What do they do with these reviews, Dave, and how do they respond, or should they respond?
So I think, you probably have to give yourself a cutoff if you haven't responded to these things or you have a business that hasn't been doing that. And I think what your real focus should be, because at a certain point, it's kind of like, too little too late in that situation. So I think you have to make a judgment call on what you feel comfortable with. And it could be a situation where you have to take it case by case. But I think what you should do then, if you're going to make the conscious effort, though, to go back and really make this a priority for your business, is it's really about doing that and then looking at those places maybe you have like really, really old reviews, and put a focus on getting newer reviews and getting people there, so those kind of older ones are kind of put to the background. And so that's how I would kind of approach that. It's really hard to say because it depends on the nature of the business, but I think, yeah, you don't want to run into a too little too late situation where you're bringing up a can of worms. Yeah, I would focus on getting new reviews to kind of bring those things to the forefront.
I will say one scenario that I think it could be a good idea is if you've bought a business and they had older reviews and a lot of them were negative, maybe you go in and you try to address some of them so that new people coming in who see that information, and if it's a ton, maybe don't focus on them, focus on the top 3 that are showing up right now when you go in there, and let them know that you bought the business and you're striving to do better and some changes you're making. That might be a good way to approach it as well. But I agree, there are some instances where it may not really be worth your time if something is that old.
I love the under new management angle. I like
Yes,
that.
yes. So Kathleen asks, I don't know how to find any reviews. Can you tell us where to look for them? Do you have any advice there, Dave?
So I'm not sure I really understand the question. I think, when you are searching for a business and on those search results come up, that's where you're going to find the reviews. I don't know if that's what you mean, and then I think it would depend on what platform we're particularly talking about, but all those reviews, I mean, if we're looking at Google, for example, those reviews, if you're searching for someone, show up within the listing itself, and that's usually right underneath that kind of the name of the business. It kind of gives you how many reviews that are there, and it shows you those links, and you can click through to those reviews. Similarly, that's the same thing with any other site that you would find. So Yelp, for example, you'll probably see the name of the business, some information, and then like an overall rating for that particular business. And so all of that stuff is usually front and center. If you're having trouble finding, or you don't know if you have that for your business, again, the recommendation would be to search for your business to see what sites come up, and then start clicking through those links to see what you find.
Yeah, I would particularly look for some of those main ones we saw. Look for a Google business listing, because sometimes those can get created from Google just by doing all this research and putting up a listing, and then you have to go in and claim it, just like in the example we saw for Yelp. And then pay attention to reviews for Facebook as well as Yelp as well. So maybe you could type in your business name, Facebook reviews, or your business name and Yelp reviews in order to find that information. So Latina asks, if we claim a listing, will we receive notifications if someone posts a review, or do we need to keep visiting the sites to look? I do believe that most of the sites will actually send you a notification if I'm remembering correctly. Do you have any insight on that too, Dave?
I believe most of the sites do, if you're using them, if you've claimed that business. And so, yeah, you should receive some type of notification when a new action happens on there. Because if you think of any of these social sites, for example, and I know we're kind of light social at this point, but they always want to try to get you back to the site. They always want to try to get more engagement. And so you can usually modify.
Hey, Dave, I think we lost you. Okay, it's not just me. I thought maybe it was just me on my end. But we'll give Dave a minute to come up there. But and I believe on most of the sites, there's probably going to be some notifications. Of course, on Facebook, you get tons of notifications all the time. So you'll get one there, and you'll probably be able to adjust them if you want the notifications or if you want to log in all the time. We'll give Dave a minute to see if he's able to get back on. So sorry about that. Let's move on to this next question from Elizabeth. How do we come up on top on Google if we have competitors? Thank you. So there's a lot that goes into it. SEO, or search engine optimization. So many things go into it, but if you're answering questions or you have relevant content for what people are searching for, a lot of it's going to be due to your website. But one of those things is linking back to all of these other places and channels and tools. So if you can set up a listing on Google Business Profile, Yelp, and some of these other ones that are particular to your industry, those are certain types of things that can help. And I think sometime this year, we're really hoping to do a webinar at SEO to really dive into those types of things more. It's not a huge thing that I'm very familiar with. I know the basics of things like that, but I'd really like to bring in an expert and dive into that more specifically. But that's a really great question. So this next one is from Christine, and it says, where does a Google post appear? So a Google post appears in that Google business profile, and it usually appears a little bit further down the bottom. So really all you have to do is go in there and find that information. Let's see. Ed wants to know, how do I contact Google Business Profile? I'm not sure what you mean with your question there. Ed, maybe you have some problems with your Google Business Profile, but usually what you can do is you can type in support Google Business and you might be able to find something there. I don't believe they have any phone support that I've ever been aware of, but you can usually do a little bit of Googling and maybe find that information. I'm assuming they have a inbox that maybe someone in their support team monitors. All right. I just want to double check and make sure everyone can still hear me, because it doesn't look like Dave has come back in yet. Or maybe he has and he's still frozen. If you can hear me, just say, yes, we can hear you in the chat window or the questions window. Perfect, Blake. All right, thanks, Lisa. So that is good. Must be just on Dave's end. So Valerie asks, what do you recommend for a law firm? And I saw a few of you posting a few examples here. So, or wanting to know examples of different listings and review sites for particular businesses. So I'm gonna share a link. I'm gonna grab it here. And we've got a page that I'm going to share with you. And at the top of the page is going to be a general guide. I've shared the guide throughout the webinar series, so some of you may already have it. But if you scroll down on this page that I'm putting in the chat window right now, you're going to be able to find review sites as well as a ton of information specific to other industries. And I'll put this on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. So up at the top, this is general. Go down the screen a little bit and grab the guide for your particular type of industry, or if you're in real estate, nonprofits, retail, or any of these others. And we've got tips and suggestions that are broken down for the different industries in there. I just popped it in there. Look for the chat window. It should be in that GoToWebinar dashboard that pops up on the right-hand side of your screen. So you'll probably find one in there for law firm. I think there's a travel one, if I remember right. Yes, travel and tourism, personal care, if you're an independent author, auto repair, daycares, and things like that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and try to answer one more question here before we end today. All right. So Janetta says, what about copying reviews from Facebook to my website, or should I just ask them to go to the website? I am not 100% sure if Facebook has anything in their terms of agreements that would prohibit that. What you can do and what would be really beneficial to you there, and I think Dave mentioned it, is take it and share it on your social platform. Let other people know that so-and-so just said how great your services were, and that will really spread the word about those great reviews. All right, so I do see we're out of time, and I want to thank you all for joining us today. So sorry we lost Dave there at the end. I'm not sure why. Thank you again for attending our webinar and our webinar series, and be sure to join us tomorrow for How to Win with Email Marketing, and that starts at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And Ellen, I see your question there. I will share a link to the YouTube playlist. We are creating a YouTube playlist. The recordings and the emails will go out at the end of the week, but for anyone who is interested in seeing the recordings and anything you may have missed now, that will be on our YouTube page. So let me just grab you a direct link. Yeah, no problem. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And I'm going to hang on here for just another minute so that you all can grab that YouTube link if you would like for now. And then you'll get the recordings. Like I said, if you miss it now, look for the information at the end of the week, and we'll share all of the resources again, as well as all of the recordings. You're welcome, Jill and Ellen. Thank you so much for joining us. It just popped into the chat window. It'll be in that GoToWebinar dashboard, the dark blue bar on the right-hand side of your screen. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Mary and Nikela. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close out of this session for today. Thank you all again, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.